Begin today the Gemara on Daf Samachei Amud Aleph, 4 lines from the top of the Amud where it says Gufa. So the Gemara here is coming back to halacha that was mentioned before in one of the psukim that was brought regarding the chiyuv of paying kefil by a ganef. Okay, so this is going to bring us into a long discussion in regard to how does a ganef pay back what he stole. Gufa. So here's the halacha itself that Rav said before. Omar Rav Keren, the principle of the actual object that you stole. So when you pay it back, how do you evaluate the value of this object to pay back? Ke'en shagonav, according to its value in the time of when you stole it. So even if its value changes later and it goes down, doesn't matter. You have to pay the way it was l'chatchila when it was stolen. The Gemara before brought the pasuk of Geneva and Chayim, which means that you have to be mechaya. You have to give the payment of the way it was at the time of the Geneva. However, tashlumi kefil, the kefil that you have to pay for Geneva, or tashlumi Bava Kama, or when you have to pay 4 or 5 times as much if you slaughtered or if you sold it, this you only have to pay like the value that it has at the time when you come to the din teira. So then, if its value changes, you pay according to the value that it has then. Because in the pasuk, when it says Chayim, Geneva, the word Geneva in the pasuk refers to the keren, to the actual principle, the Geneva itself. That's something that you pay kishasta Geneva. But the kefil, Bava Kama, that's additional payments. That's you pay according to what it's later. So the Gemara explains, my time of the Rav or Makra, because the pasuk says Geneva v'Chayim. The 2 extra words in the pasuk where it says Himatzis biyadi haGeneva, and then in the end of the pasuk it says Chayim Shnayim Yishalem. So those words in the pasuk say that the Geneva itself, you have to keep it alive and pay it. Amai Kamar Achmana Chayim b'Geneva Achye lekeren ke'en shagonav. You always have to keep the principle of what it is, the way it's alive at the time of the Geneva. That's the level of value that you have to pay whenever it is, even later on, even if the value goes down. That's a statement of Rav. One second, let's see. Okay, so I'm giving the example of when it goes down, but let's see what the Gemara is going to say now about this. Now, Mrs. L'chaira, what Rav is saying over here is either way, whether it goes up, whether it goes down, and also another thing, how did the value go up or down? It could happen in 1 or 2 ways, or a few ways. It could happen by market value. The value of the object that you stole went up or down. It could also change by, if you're talking about an animal, it could also change by the animal grows. You feed the animal, and therefore the animal now becomes more valuable. Or if you don't feed the animal properly, you hit it, or you work it hard to the point that it loses its value, it becomes weaker. So the value of this animal could change up or down in various different ways. So the Gemara is going to discuss this now, regarding what case did Rav say is halacha. So first Gemara says like this: Amar Rav Sheshes, Amina, I can tell you, Kinayim v'shachiv Rav Amar lo hashmaita. That this halacha that Rav said here, he must have said it when he was awake or asleep. He was half asleep when he said this halacha, because in other words, he was trying to say Rav never could have meant to say this, because we have a clear brayso that says different. Tanya, in a brayso, it says chusha. If a person steals an animal, which is a meager, weak animal, v'shmino, and he feeds it, he himself goes by and mamish feeds it, and it becomes a nice big fat animal. So it's in his possession, b'gneva, and now it's a fat animal. How do you pay? Mishalem tashlumi kefil tashlumi Bava Kama. When you pay the kefil or Bava Kama, how do you pay? Ke'en shagonav. You only have to pay it in the value that it was when you stole it, which was a kusha, which was a weak animal. But what did Rav say though? Rav said that when you pay the kefil and the Bava Kama, you have to pay it according to the value that it is at the time of the din teira now, when you're paying now, not the value that it had before when it got stolen. So why is it saying over here that if you fattened it up and you fed it, so you pay according to the value that it was at the time when it was stolen? So they answered Rav Sheshes his question that there's no question b'chlal. In this case, even Rav will agree that you have to pay the kefil only the way it was when it was stolen, not according to the value that it's now. Because over here, in this case, the ganef could say, I'm fattening it up and I'm feeding it, and that's how it became fat in my possession. It just come fat on its own. I fed it. So now the payment of kefil should be based on this, the way I fattened up this animal. So what the Gemara is saying is, if the market value just went up, or the person just kept it in his possession and just on its own, it grew, it became fat on its own. That's what Rashi holds over here in the Gemara. Rashi holds that if the value of the animal changes, whether because the market value went up or down, or on its own, its value changes. In such a case, you pay it, like Rav said, kishas hamada badin, the way it is by the time of the Din. But if you yourself fattened it, you yourself fed it, so in such a case, you have to pay it only the way it was, k'en shaganav, not the additional things that you added when you fed it. Similar thing the Gemara says also regarding the opposite. So Tashama, the Braisa here says, Shmeina v'kchisha. If you have an animal that was fat, and v'kchisha, and over here v'kchisha also means that the person himself went and he weakened this animal. Rashi says either the person hit this animal or the person worked the animal down to its bone, that it got very weak. So now when you have to pay the kefil, mishalim tashlume kefil, tashlume Bava Kama, so you pay the kefil or Bava Kama, and here the Gemara is actually going to focus on the union of Bava Kama, that the payment of Bava Kama is if you sold it or if you slaughtered it. So after that you have to pay 4 or 5 times as much. But what's the value they have to pay? Ke'en shaganav, according to its value, the way it was in the beginning, not after you went and worked it to its bone and it became very weak. So over here as well, you see it, not like Rav said. Rav said that you pay the value according to the way it is now. Hamad bedin, when you're paying, not the way it was in the beginning. So the Gemara answers over here and says, Hasam nami. Over here as well, Rav will agree to the halacha that it says in the Braisa. Because we say to the person that you stole from that mali kotla kula, or you say to this person, actually we say over here to this person that stole the animal, mali kotla kula, mali kotla palga. What difference does it make if you kill an animal completely, you shecht it completely, or you kill it halfway, you shecht it partially, you weaken it? It's the same thing. What's the Gemara trying to say by this? What the Gemara is saying is, just like when you take an animal that you stole and you shecht it, so you have to pay the value that the animal has the moment before you shecht it. If you steal the animal and it has whatever value it has when you stole it, and then b'shas you shecht it, so right at the beginning, when you begin shechting it, so the value of the animal goes down from the first second of the shechita, the second after the shechita, the third second. So then the animal actually dies. Then the value of the animal goes down completely. So what value do you have to pay? You have to pay the value that it was right at the beginning of the shechita. Same thing over here. If this person steals an animal that's a shmeina, and he goes ahead and first he hits it and he takes away value from it, and then he eventually shechts it. So we don't look at the value that it has when you actually shechted it. We look at the value that it has in the beginning of this process. B'shas you began, when you began weakening it by hitting it or whatever else you did. Because that's really the time that we look at this. It's like one long shechita over here. You can shecht an animal by just taking a knife and shechting it, or you can sort of shecht and weaken the animal by working with it and causing it to be weaker and weaker until the point that you just go ahead and shecht it. So therefore you over here, in this case, Rav will agree that the payment of Dalet V'Hei, Bava Kama, is K'en Shaganav, like it was before you began weakening it. So now, when did Rav say his halacha? Ki ka'amar Rav. When Rav said his halacha that the keren you pay ke'en shaganav, and the kefil or the dalet v'hei you pay the way it is b'shas ha'moda badin. This distinction Rav said is b'yukra v'zula, regarding if the value went up or down, the market value, not as a result of an action that you did, just on its own. The market value goes up and down. Over here, hu de ka'amar. This is when Rav said this distinction of the keren itself you pay ken shaganav, and the tashlum kefil and dalet v'hei you pay according to the way it is now. Rashi's shit over here in the sugi is, even though the Gemara uses the term of yukra v'zula, which is the market value that changes, but it's similar also, any change that happens in the animal that's not based on an action that you did by hand and caused the change, but a change that happens in the animal just naturally, that it grows and it gets fatter or it gets weaker, if the change happened on its own, the chiluk of Rav will apply as well. Okay, so now the Gemara explains regarding this example of yukra v'zula, the value goes up and down, the market value. So in this case, Rav says that by the keren, the principle you have to pay ken shaganav. So the Gemara asks on this, what are we talking about over here? If you're going to say Rav said his halacha in the following case, the meikara shavi zuzah, the animal that you stole in the beginning was worth just 1 zuz. Well, the b'sayv shavi dalet, and now the market value goes up, and therefore now it's worth 4 zuz. Dalet zuzi, that is. So keren shaganav, is Rav in such a case still going to say that you have to pay the keren only the value that it was, just 1 zuz, like it was at the time that it was stolen, and not 4 zuz, the value that it has now when you went ahead and shechted it and so on? But if so, leme pliga de Rav, de Rabbi. If so, we'll have to say that what Rav says argues on what Rabbi said, because Rabbi said the following rule. Rabbi says, "Hayman de gosel chavita de chamre." Person that steals a barrel of wine from his friend. Meikare shav yezuzah. This barrel of wine in the beginning, when he stole it, in the market value, it's worth 1 zuz. Ulebesayf shav yedalet, and then in the end, it's worth 4 zuz. What does it mean lebesayf in the end? In the end means when he went and drank it. Either he drank this bottle of, or this barrel from this barrel of wine, or he broke the barrel of wine, and the wine got lost. So in the end, at the time when he actually drank it, it's worth now 4 zuz. So how much does he pay? The Rabbi said as follows: if the person broke the barrel of wine at the time when it's worth 4 zuz, or he drank it up at that time, so then mishalem dalet. So then you have to pay 4 zuz. Why do you have to pay 4 zuz? So Rashi here explains, because just like you stole the barrel of wine in the beginning, when you actually stole it, when you drink it, this is a second gzela. You're doing a new gzela now. A barrel of wine that you steal from someone and is in your possession, it's not in your possession. You're keeping the barrel of wine that belongs to the nigzal, to the real owner. So it's in your possession, but it doesn't belong to you. Now when you drink it and you consume it, you destroy it, you're doing now a new ma'isa gzela, a second gzela to take it out of this world. So therefore you have to pay the value that it is at the time when you actually drink it or break it, which is 4 zuz now. However, if while it's in your possession, this barrel of wine just bursts and breaks on its own, so then Mishalem Zuzi, you didn't do a new Maisa Gzela now. The act of the Gzela that you did, you stole it in the beginning, that was the only act of Gzela that you did, and then it's worth 1 zuz, so you pay that value of 1 zuz like it was then. So what's the Gemara asking? How could Rav over here say that when you steal this animal and you pay the keren ke'en shaganav? And Rav was talking about a case where what did the person do with this animal? He shechted it. And he's telling you a distinction. Regarding the dalad vehei, you pay according to the value that it has now. But regarding the keren, you pay like the value that it was in the beginning, even though now it's worth double, triple, or 4 times as much. But why? If you shechted it now, that means that there's a new Maisa Gneva taking place now. If there's a new Maisa Gneva taking place right now, he should pay even the keren according to the value that it has now. That's it. Huh? No, he could. The Gemara is just asking, should we say that Rav argues on this concept that Rav has said, that right now there's a new Maisa Gneva, so if the value goes up, you should pay according to the value that's now.
But also according to this, if he could, the Nigzel could have had the money and gained the money. Now he still lost that money to Nigzel. That's
Why this way?
Huh?
If there's a new gezeilah b'shas 3 chamachiris.
So over here, because the new gzela that happened now doesn't take away from the gzela that already happened before. The gzela that happened before, that you have to pay kan shaganav. Even though there was another gzela that happened now, it doesn't change from what it was in the beginning. So that you pay kan.
Give back the guy at some chayfetz, it would only be worth 1 zuz.
Right. Anachanami. Okay, we'll see soon in the Gemara about that. I don't know if we're going to get to it today, but the Gemara explains that this halacha that we're learning here, what Rav said, doesn't always apply. It depends how you're paying back. Okay, we'll have to see the Gemara later. Okay, Zok the Gemara, Tani Rab Chanina l'siyuei l'Rav. Rab Chanina brought a braise that could be a raya to Rav's halacha. What does it say in this braise? Balabai shatan. Here, a person that's a balabas, that's a shomer. He took an object into his possession to safeguard it for someone, and then he comes and says and claims Tainas Ganav, that it got stolen from him, regarding this pikadon that he's safeguarding. And Venishba, he swears falsely to say that it got stolen from him, and he's a Shem Chinam, and he wants to pater himself. And then he comes and admits that he lied. And then after he admitted, Ubo Eidim, now witnesses come along and say that he has it, he stole it. Okay, so this is the case we had before the Gemara. Tayin is Ganef. So in such a case, you have to pay keren, you have to pay kefil. Actually, in such a case where you swore falsely, the halacha is that you have to pay also a fifth. You have to pay the principal and a chaimish, another fifth of the value of it, and you also have to bring a carbon osham. So the Brayso says as follows: now, if this person himself admitted to his false claim and his false shvua that he made, he admitted this, so then you don't pay any kefil for this. The usual kefil that we said before applies, even by a toyin tainis ganav, does not apply over here. What do you pay? You pay the keren, the chaimish, you pay an additional fifth for swearing falsely, and also v'asham, you have to bring a carbon asham. That's what it says in the pasuk there in the end of Parshas Vayikra regarding such a case. But the kefil you don't pay. But if after the Eidim came already, then the person was made to what he did, that he the false claim and the false shvur that he said. So in such a case, mashalom tashlumi kefil. Over here, you're going to have to pay kefil as well. As we learned before, you become patur from kefil if you made the b'knas. If you made the before the Eidim comes, so you don't pay that kefil because it's made the b'knas. But if the Eidim came before and you were made afterwards, so then you have to pay kefil. Now, once you pay the kefil, so you pay kefil, and you have to bring a carbon asham, ve'asham, but v'chumshoy oyel lebekfeloi. Chaimish, that additional fifth that the pasuk says you usually have to pay, when you're made over here in this case, you don't have to pay it because you're anyways paying kefil. So the kefil includes in it also already the payment of that fifth that you have to pay. Divrei Rav Yaakov, this is Rav Yaakov's opinion. Okay, but now here there's an important point that Rashi adds, which we'll see is relevant for the continuation of the Gemara. This is the main point the Gemara is going to focus on. We're talking over here about a situation where the value of the fifth that you pay and the value of the kefil that you would have to pay are the same. The only time you say that you don't have to pay separately, the chaimish and the kefil is they have to have the same value. And then I say, once you're paying the kefil, so then the chaimish has the same value, so you don't have to pay it separately. But if the chaimish and the kefil have a different value, so then you're going to have to pay the chaimish separately and the kefil separately. Now the Gemara is going to discuss soon, how is that possible that chaimish and kefil can have the same value? Kefil means you're paying double, and chaimish means you're paying a fifth. Okay, that the Gemara will explain, and that will be the raya for Rav. Okay, but let's see the other two opinions that it says over here in the Braisa. The Chachamim say regarding this situation, where a person swears falsely regarding an object that he has in his possession, and the Torah says that you have to pay the fifth. So the lashon of the pasuk is beroishai. So the lashon of the pasuk there says v'shila ma'aseh beroishai, and then the chamishisav yosef olav. You pay the head. What does the head mean? You pay the keren, actual principle of what you claim that you don't have and you stole it. You pay that, and then you add the fifth. So what it means is as follows: when you pay the keren itself and there's no other payment that you have to pay, so then you have to add a fifth to it. But if you're paying not just the keren itself, but you're also paying kefil, so that's in addition to the into the keren, then amos of chaimish, and there's no halacha of chaimish. So what Chachamim are saying is that you never pay a chaimish if you pay kefil. It's one or the other. Rav Yaakov said that there's a concept called chumshoy oyle bekfeloi, that you have to see if the kefil that you pay and the chaimish have the same value, then you could say that one covers the other. Chachamim say no. You only pay this added chaimish if you're just paying the keren, which is the pasuk calls roishay. But otherwise you don't pay the chaimish at all. A third opinion here is Rav Shimon ben Yechoyah. In a place where you pay kefil, not only do you not pay the chaimish, you actually don't have to bring the carbon asham either. You put it from the carbon as well. Okay, the Gemara will soon explain that detail of the machlokes here. But now the Gemara comes back to Rabbi Yaakov's opinion. What does the Braisa here say? That there's a possibility where the chaimish is going to be the same value as the kefil, Divrei Rabbi Yaakov, and therefore you don't have to pay the chaimish. But the question is, how is that possible that the chaimish and the kefil end up the same value? Hey Chadami, what are we talking about over here? Ilem, if you're going to say the case over here is that the animal, for example, that you stole, may cut a shavya dalet, when you stole it has the value of 4 zuz, or lebesayv shavya arba. And in the end, when you shecht it, or in the end, when you have to pay for it, it has the same value of 4 zuz. So if so, chumshay oyle b'kfeloi, how could you say that the value of the chaimish and the value of the kefil is the same thing? Kfela, in such a case, what's the amount that you're paying double of this thing that's worth 4 zuz? It's arba. You're paying another 4 zuz. And the chumsha, what's the fifth of this? The fifth of 4 of something that has a value of 4 zuz is only zuzah. There's only 1 zuz. This is the concept of fifth. It's called chaimish malabar. If you include the total value together with the fifth, so the fifth of 4 is going to be just 1 zuz, and together 4 and 1 is 5. That's a fifth. So how could you say that it's the same value? So the Gemara says, what are you going to have to explain? Alme, the only way to explain this is keren ke'en shagonav. I'm sorry, I skipped 2 lines here. Going back to what Gemara says before. Ella, so the only way to explain this is, according to what Rav said. So Lav, don't you think the case over here is the Mikara Shav Yarba? This animal that you stole, in the beginning it had a value of 4 zuz. Now L'B'soiv Shav Yizuz, and now the value went down and it's only worth 1 zuz. Okay, so now here it could come out that the chaimish and the kefil will be the same. The kfela zuzah. So the kefil that you pay the value of the kefil the way it was, the way it is that is now. Like Rav said, the kefil you pay according to the value that it's now. So since now it's only worth a zuz, so the double of that is also a zuz. But v'chumshei, the fifth that you have to pay here, this fifth you pay like the way it was in the beginning when you stole it. So therefore, what's the fifth of the way it was in the beginning, which is 4 zuz? Zuzah. It's also the same 1 zuz. This is the kind of case where you see that according to Rav, you could say that the chaimish and the kefil is the same value. So Alma, you see from here, keren ken shaganav. The keren you pay according to the value that it is in the time when you stole it, and therefore the chaimish of that will be also ken shaganav, which is 1 zuz in this case, and tashlumi kefil, tashlumi dalad v'hei kishas amod bedin, and the kefil or the dalad v'hei that you pay is according to the value that it has now. So therefore, here you're paying only 1 zuz as well for the kefil. So this is a braisa where you see the concept that Rav said. So the Gemara says no, it's not necessarily a raya to what Rav said. Omar Rav says, I'll give you a different way of how the chaimish and the kefil could end up being the same value without Rav's chiddush. Loilam, really I can tell you the case over here is the Mikara Shav Yarba, V'hashtanami Shav Arba. This animal you stole in the beginning is worth 4 zuz. Now it's worth 4 zuz. With the kakashya, the question that you asked, Kfela, Dalit. If so, the kefil is going to be 4 zuz. And the chumshe, zuzah, and the chaimish is just 1 zuz. How could Rabbi Yaakov say chumshe eule b'kfela that it has the same value? What we're talking about over here is that this person swore falsely about this object that he has, or this animal that he has in his possession. He swore falsely 4 times. And then he admitted that I swore falsely 4 times. And the Torah says, V'chamishi sov. It doesn't say V'chamishi soi, a singular term. It uses a plural term. V'chamishi sov. Chamishi is harbe bekeren achas. For every single time that you swore falsely, you have to pay again another 5th. So in such a case where you swore falsely 4 times, so the 5th that you're going to have to pay is going to be 4 zuz, which will be the same as the value of the kefil of the animal, which is also 4 zuz. It's in that case that Rabbi Yaakov said that the chaimish and the kefil is going to be the same value, and therefore you don't have to pay the chaimish once you pay the kefil. Okay, now the Gemara comes back to explain the machlokes of the Chachamim and Abshim ben Yochai. Amar the Braisa said, "V'chachamim maimrim." The Chachamim say when it says "beroishai v'chamishisai" or "v'chamishisav," so then we say as follows: "Mamen amishtalim beroish." If you're only paying the keren, which is what's called mishtalim, the roish, the principle of it, then ma'asav chaimish. Then you have to add also a 5th. Mamen she'ein mishtalim beroish. If you're not just paying the keren, you're also paying kefil. So then, ma'asav chaimish. In such a case, it doesn't make a difference if the chaimish has the same value as the kefil or not. You don't pay the chaimish. But what did the Chachamim hold? Aval asham maisi. The carbon asham you always still have to bring, even if you're paying kefil as well. The carbon you still have to bring. So, but then the Gemara brought Rav Shimon ben Yochai argues in that. Rav Shimon ben Yochai says that in a case where you don't pay chaimish, you don't bring a carbon asham either. So the Gemara asks on this. What's the explanation of the Chacham's opinion? Why should we make a distinction between the payment of the chaimish and the carbon asham? What's the difference when it comes to the chaimish? The loy mishalim. So as the Braisa said, the drasha, you don't pay the chaimish in a case where you pay kefil because the chsiv beroishai v'chamishisai. That only if you're paying the roish, which is keren, then you have to add a 5th. Not if you're paying kefil. So if so, asham nami loy mishalim. So you shouldn't have to bring a carbon asham as well, unless you're only paying the kerem, because the aksiv b'roishoy v'chamishisai, and then the continuation of the pasuk says right afterwards, ve'es ashamai. Right, so in that same pasuk right over there afterwards, after it says that you pay the chaimish, it says also ve'es ashama yavi. So why can't you learn out the same exact drasha that you only bring the carbon asham if you're paying the keren? But once you pay kefil, you don't have to pay a chaimish, and you shouldn't have to bring the carbon asham either. Amr lach Rabbanan, so the Rabbanan will answer you, no, the asham is separate. Es paske kra. When it says ve'es ashamai, the pasuk, the word es separates and says that the asham is independent, that you pay regardless of whether you're paying just keren or you pay kefil as well. The carbon asham you always have to bring. That's how the Rabban understand this. Now, so the Gemara comes back now to explain Rab Shimon ben Yochai. Rab Shimon ben Yochai, they say that no, that if you're not paying just the keren, just like you don't pay chaimish, you don't bring a carbon either. And they say that these two things go hand in hand. How does Rab Shimon ben Yochai interpret this? He says the opposite. V'es arve kra. When the pasuk says the carbon asham, after it speaks about the chaimish, it says with a vav, v'es. So the pasuk is coming to say that these two are actually similar. That just like whatever the halacha of the chaimish is, the same halacha applies to the carbon asham. If you're not paying chaimish, you don't bring a carbon asham. That's why it says a vav, to say that it's the same. How did the Rabbanan answer that? It says a vav, doesn't it show that they are the same? The Rabbanan Amri Loch, the Rabbanan will answer you, loy lichtech rachmane, loy vav, loy yes. When the Torah is saying the carbon asham, why does it have to say the entire word of v'es? Shouldn't say not the s and not the vav of the s. And then I would say that the asham has the same halacha as the chaimish. The fact that it says the word s, even if it says it with a vav, it doesn't matter. The Torah is separating the asham. It's actually in a separate pasuk. And the Torah is saying that it has a separate halacha, that you always have to bring the carbon asham independent of whether you have to pay the chaimish or not. Rab Shimon ben Yochai will tell you, es you can't ask me why the Torah had to write the word es. The Torah has to write the word es. Why? Because the Torah wants to make a distinction between the chaimish that you pay and the carbon that you bring. The chaimish that you pay, who gets that chaimish? The chaimish goes to the person that you tried to steal from. The carbon goes to the Eibishter. So the Torah wants to make a separation between the money paid to another hedyot, the person you tried to steal from, and the carbon. Therefore it writes es. So that's not a question. Once the Torah has to write to the S, now the Torah adds the Vav there, Arvekra, to come and say that we connect, that the carbon ashram has the same halacha like the chaimish, that if you pay chaimish, you bring a carbon. If you don't pay chaimish, you don't bring a carbon. Okay, that's the explanation of this braisa.
It's a new pasuk, how can you get away without writing S?
Huh? Even if it's a new pasuk, it could have said, Ashama Yavel Hashem, yeah, I mean, that's a... Okay. Now the Gemara comes back to the main halacha that we're talking about over here, or geneva. When a person steals and he has to pay for it, what happens if there's a change in the condition of what you stole? So in connection to this, the Gemara brings Omer Abilah. Abilah said, Gonav Tleh, if you steal a lamb, and then Manasa Ayil, it becomes a ram. Now, we're talking about this animal that at the age of 13 months, so that its identity changes. It's already mature, and it turns into a ram. So you stole it when it was a little lamb, and now it turned into a ram. Or an egel, you stole it as a calf, and v'nasa shor, and then it turns into an ox. Meaning that at a certain point, I think it's at 2 years old, its name changes. It's not a calf anymore, it's an ox. So now, what happens in such a case, nasa shinui biyodai, the item that you stole changed completely in your possession. Now, once it changes in your possession, v'konoi, the Ganev acquires this, and therefore, once you acquire it, Tavach umachar, if then afterwards you go and you slaughter it or you sell it to someone else, you're not going to have to pay the way you usually pay. So usually if you slaughter it or sell it, so you have to pay 4 or 5 times its value, but in this case you don't have to. Because here we say, once it changed in your possession, you acquire it. Shalayu teveyach, shalayu meicher. Now you're slaughtering or selling what's already yours, because it changed in your possession, you're kind of this. We're going to see soon later in the Gemara and Daf Samach Vav, later in the Sugya, the Gemara is going to bring the sources for this concept by a Ganev. Once there's a shinui, once it changes in your possession, you acquire it, it becomes yours. Obviously that doesn't mean that you can keep it, and what that means is, the item itself that you stole, you don't have to pay back. You have to pay back not only money, but the item itself, once there was a shinui, you can keep it. That's the concept of shinui kaina b'negei ta Ganev. Over here though, the Gemara is saying an interesting thing. regarding this egel or teleh that you stole, what kind of a shini happened over here? The shini didn't happen where there was a real shini that you did to be mishanit. The shini happened just naturally. The animal just matured, and it went from being an egel to becoming a shayr. So says the Gemara, just this shini itself, you're kainet. Once you're kainet, so now tovach hamacha, you don't have to pay for it. Okay, so now many Rishonim, or most Rishonim probably, learned the pshat over here in the Gemara, the way I'm explaining it literally, that once this shini happens, even though it's happening naturally, you don't have to pay anymore for the tficha and mechira, because now it's in your possession, you just have to pay back money. But the animal itself is now yours to keep, and you can check it. But Rashi over here actually says that over here, since we're talking about this kind of shinoi that just happens on its own, and it's really the very same egel, it's the very same animal that you stole that just grew a year or two and became into a shayr. So over here, it's not a real shinoi that you kind it completely to be yours. You still have to return this animal itself. And when the Gemara over here says konoi, it's the kinyan over here is only legabe the tvicha mechira. Legabe this halacha of tvicha mechira that you have to pay 4 or 5 times as much. It's legabe this that Rabbi Law is saying that you don't have to pay anymore the dalet v'hei because the animal changed. But regarding the other payments that you have to pay for this, whether the keren that you have to pay, so Rashi brings like we already said before, that the keren you have to pay, like Rav said, ke'en shagonav, and then the kefil that you have to pay, that doesn't change. That halacha, it's still, you are not kainet. When the Gemara here says kainet, it means legabe the halacha of tvicha mechira. Okay. So now, Esver Rab Chanina Rabbi Law. Rab Chanina asks Rabbi Law on this chiddush that he just says here. The Brisa says clearly the opposite. Gonav Tlev and Asa Ayel. Person steals a sheep or a lamb that is, and it turns into a ram, or a egel, and Asa Shoyer, a calf, and it becomes an ox. Mishalam Tashlume Kefil. You pay double for what you stole, and then it says also V'Tashlume Arba v'Chamisha Ke'en Shaganav. And you pay the payment of dalet v'hei when you shechted it, and you pay it like the value that it was at the time when you stole it. So what do we see over here? The Brisa clearly says that you have to pay for when you shechted, even though it changed. It turned into a ram, it turned into an ox. If Rabbi Law is right, that once it turns from a calf into an ox, or from a lamb into a ram, so now it's yours in that sense that you don't have to pay for the tvicha mechira, amay mishalem. Why is the Brisa saying that you pay for this? Shalayu tevech, shalayu meicher. In this Lagabi, this halacha, it's considered to be that he's shachting his own thing, and therefore he doesn't have to pay for the dalet v'hei. That was the question that was asked on Rabbi Law. Amalei, so Rabbi Law answers Rabbi Chanina, ve'elamai. So what are you going to answer me? Shini loikani, that the change that happened to the condition of this animal when it matured, so you're not kainet, we disregard that shini. What we say is, it's the very same calf. And the fact that it turned to an ox, what do you mean? It's the same calf that becomes an ox. Nothing changed there. If so, what's the detail that the Brisa says? Amay mishalim ke'en shagonav. Why does the Brisa say that when he has to pay, he pays the dalet v'hei in the value that it was at the time that it got stolen? Why should he pay only the value the way it was when it got stolen? L'shalem ki hashta. Why doesn't he pay the value the way it is right now? Mm-hmm. If it's really the same animal that just matured and became older, and you're telling me that change is not a real change, that it's a new animal, something else that really changed, but it's the same animal that matured, so why are you only paying ken shaganav? It's the very same animal that you stole before, now is a ram, now is already an ox, so you should pay the value that it has now. So the very fact that the Brisa says, Ke'en Shagonav, that shows that the animal that it was at the time of the Geneva is one animal, and the animal that it is now is a different animal. And because it's a different animal today, so therefore you don't pay the value that it has now, you only pay it Ke'en Shagonav. So the Lashon of the Brisa, Ke'en Shagonav, actually it proves the point of Rabbi Law, that we do pay attention to this shinui that happens. So that was the question that Rabbi Law asked back to Rabbi Chanina. So L'shalem ki hashta. So Amalei, Rabbi Chanina says back to him, ki hashta haina taima deloy mishalem. The reason why you don't pay back the value that it has now that it's a ram or now that it's an ox, mishum da Amalei, because the Ganev could say, Tura gavi mimach. Did I steal from you a ox? Dichre gavi mimach. Did I steal from you a ram? That's not what I stole from you. I stole from you a calf. I stole from you a lamb. And the fact that it turns now into a shoyer or into an ayel, it's a new mitzias, it's a shinui. Yeah. So I don't pay for what it's now. I pay for what it was before.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's the point that Rab Chanina is saying over here? Rab Chanina is saying that when it comes to the payment, so over here you do pay attention to the shinui, that when you stole it, it was a little lamb, and now when you're coming to pay back, now it's this big ram. And regarding this, we do pay attention to that shinui, and we say that the Ganav says, I'm only paying for the lamb that I stole. I'm not paying the value of the ram the way it is now. So Amalei, Rabbi Loah says to Rab Chanina, very strong expression. Rabbi Loah says, Rachmanan etzlan mahai daita. The Eibush should save us from your opinion. What does this mean? That this opinion that you're saying over here, that when you have this animal that changes, so on one hand, Rab Chanina is saying that the fact that it changes doesn't matter, and you're not koyin it, and you're still going to have to pay dalet v'hei if you shecht it. But on the other hand, when it comes to paying, how do you pay? You pay ke'en shaganav. Why do you pay ke'en shaganav? Because you say that the shini does not matter, and it's really all one animal. So you're saying sort of two opposite things at the same time. On one hand, you're saying we pay attention to the shinui of the maturity of the animal, and on the other hand, you're saying you're not paying attention to the maturity of this animal. So it's a strange thing. So he says, David should save us from such a kind of opinion. Amalei, so he answered him back and says, Adarab, on the contrary, Rachmanan etzlam yidai tidach. David should save us from your opinion. Your opinion that you say that it changes, and we say that it changes, and it's your kainet, and therefore if you shecht it, you're going to be potter. To say that it changes to that extent, even though it's really the very same animal, it's the same calf, it's the same lamb, it's just matured from the time. But really, it's the very same animal. To say that it changes, ad kedei kach, it doesn't make sense. So the Eibush should save us from your opinion. Okay, that's the discussion over here. But meanwhile, the Gemara does not give an answer over here to the question that was asked in Rabbi Loah over here from this Braisa. Okay, but the Gemara here over here asks a different shaila. I think we'll leave this the Hamshach over here for next time. We'll see. Okay. Huh?